everyone, today I was thinking I would do a somewhat different tutorial. If you have been on my website or seen some of the things I do around the community, you'll have probably seen that I tend to make these sorts of collages like this. And I'm sure you've seen other people do all kinds of editing of their photos to make them look nice. And I was just going to show you how I do mine. This is not by in any sense the only way you can do this, and I certainly don't think that I am the best at editing pictures in the community. Not by a long shot. There are some really talented artists in the community who do a really good job of editing pictures and could probably do a much better job of making a tutorial than I can. But I just wanted to show you the simple way that I do it, and maybe it'll give you some ideas or inspiration if you're editing your own pictures. Now, I do use an ancient program for all my pets graphics stuff. I have other graphics programs like GIMP, for example, but I really love PaintShop Pro 7. I've been using it for literally decades. I know there's a few other people in the community who also do this, and I just think I don't know. I like something about the authenticity of keeping it kind of 90s, early 2000s or something like that. So I'm going to be using PaintShop Pro. I am sure that your graphics program will have a lot of the same tools that I'm going to be using in this tutorial. So if you don't have PaintShop Pro 7, if you have Photoshop or GIMP or maybe one of the more recent versions of PaintShop Pro, which is called something else now, I think, I'm not sure, uh, all of those should work equally well. Okay, so the first thing you need is obviously some pictures. I'm using these. These are just photos I took on a white background in game using the spacebar, and they're of a hex I did recently. But basically, it's just an orange short hair wearing a diving mask, a snorkeling mask, rather. Okay, so the first thing I do is I create a new canvas. I can press Control N to get that up, but you can go through File and so on. It doesn't really matter how big it's going to be. I just want it to be quite spacious. So I tend to go with something like this, 800 by 800 pixels, and that gives me a huge blank canvas to work with. The next thing I do is that I will color the background, and I will use a color that isn't very prominent in my image. It doesn't matter what it is because it's going to be gone in the end. I'm going to delete it, but it's important that my images stand out against it. So I actually don't like that very much. I'm going to go for a bit darker because I want to be able to see. If it hurts my eyes, it doesn't work. Okay, now you can see that this says layer 1. So in PaintShop Pro, you automatically start with one layer and you can paste things as new layers. If you're in another program, I'm sure you can add another layer and paste things into a new layer and so on. There's different ways you can do it. But basically your program, if you're going to edit using my method, needs to support layers and images. So I then have to decide, I'm going to say this image. I've used the select tool to select the white background, and then I'm going to go selections, invert. Obviously you can use Shift Control I, but I'm going to just show it for the sake of showing it. And that will invert, and that cuts out the majority of the white. Not all of it, there's going to be a little bit left here and here, but we'll deal with that later. Then I'm going to change my tool. I'm going to right click and say copy. And then here I'm going to paste it as a new layer. Now that I've pasted it as a new layer, I can move it around. I'm just going to leave it here for now. It doesn't really matter. I can always reshuffle these later. And then I'm going to repeat the same exact things. I'm going to select the background on this image now. I'm going to go selections, invert, change my tool, copy, paste as new layer onto here. And then same thing with this one, selections, invert, copy, paste as new layer. So what I now have is these three images on separate layers, plus the blue background as a layer in itself as well. With Paint Shop Pro, as long as you have this selection tool, you can switch between layers. So I can move each of these things around. They move independently because they're on different layers. And I can position them how I want. Now say that I decide that I actually want to put this one behind, and then this one here, and then this one in front. Then obviously the overlap between these two isn't how it should be. You'd want this one to be the further back one. So I go to layers, and if I click on this, it will automatically put me on the same layer as that is on, which is layer 4. And then I can say arrange, move down. You see now we're on layer 3, same layer, arrange, move down, and now it's behind. So that's how you can kind of manipulate the layers that they're on and shuffle them around until they are looking how you want them to look. Okay, I don't actually want those to overlap, so this will work just fine as it is. The next thing I do is I will go to layers, I'll go to the bottom layer, and then I'll say layers view current only. So that hides the other layers that I wasn't on. And then what I can do is click layer 2 and it will make that layer show, but it also keeps the layer that I was on before that I could see. So now that it's like this, I can zoom in and I can, for example, go and get rid of all these white bits that I don't want. So this and this, if I hold shift and click, it lets me do that with multiple bits. And then I can go in even closer and delete this. All right, and let's just zoom out a little bit. Okay, this little bit here. Okay, and as it happens in this particular case, this part of the shell was also that shade of white, so it has completely gotten rid of that, but that's okay. I can just put that back in. So I'm just going to find the gap and fill this back in. Oops, do I have the wrong color? There we go. And basically you can just do all your little touch-ups, whatever it is you want to do. And I also tend to like to add little eye shines. So I know a lot of people, when they come to the community for the first time and they see edited images, they sometimes think that pets can have eye shines. It's actually really difficult to hex good eye shines, possibly impossible. I've never really bothered with trying to put eye shines on actual pets, but I do put them in my images. And then once I've done the eye shines, I go to effects, and I usually like to add a drop shadow under 3D effects. Again, these are kinds of things that if you play around in your favorite graphics program, you can probably find something that you like that works. It doesn't have to be a drop shadow. I just happen to quite like that, and it's easy to do. So then I go to layer 3, the next layer, and I repeat the same process. So I will delete the white fully. And then put in some eye shines. Zoom out just to check. Okay, and then the final layer in this case, layer 4, is just a little bit of white just here. I think otherwise it's okay. Zoom in. I might not bother with eye shines on this one because of how it's looking to the side. I think it probably looks better without. And add my drop shadow. Okay. So this has now completed my kind of composition. And the last thing I'm going to do is go to layer 1, which is the blue background layer, and I'm going to delete it. So now I have my images on a transparent background. And now what I like to do is go to layers and I go to merge and I say merge visible. So now this is one layer. If you go here, you can see that it's all one merge layer. And I now copy it. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to have to crop it. It's easier to just copy it and paste it as a new image, and it will automatically resize the canvas to fit the actual image that isn't transparent perfectly. So I now have an image that I can save, and and the way I save it is I'll export it as a PNG, and under transparency you can say to use the existing image or layer transparency, and that will then save it as this image. So I've saved that. There you go. And that's the entire process that I go through when I create an image like the ones that I showed you earlier. So all of these were done in more or less the same way. Sometimes I add text to them. Sometimes I add little touch-ups like I showed you in that particular one. Here I've added some stars and little shapes and things, and that's all done in essentially the same kind of way. Alright, so hopefully that is helpful for you if you want to be able to edit your images in a similar way to how I do it. Obviously, there are many different things you can do, and you should feel free to experiment and have a look around the community at what other people are doing as well. Maybe it'll give you some more ideas. Hope that was helpful though, and I will see you in the next one.